Zuri Adebayo met Kale Menson on an evening that smelled like rain and roasted corn. The kind of Lagos evening where the sky stays gray, but the streets keep moving like nothing can ever pause. She was leaving a small book cafe with a tote bag heavy with journals and dreams, and he was standing outside, arguing gently with the cashier because the power had blinked off and his card wouldn't work. When he saw her struggle with the door, he stepped forward without thinking, held it open, and smiled like he had known her for years. "You always carry your whole life in a bag?" he asked. Zuri laughed, surprised by how warm his voice felt. "Only the parts I'm not ready to lose," she replied. "Please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Because this love story starts softly, but it will break your heart before it heals it." Kale was the kind of man who looked calm even when life was loud. He worked in logistics, always on the move, always counting time like it was money. Zuri was a junior architect, patient and stubborn, the kind of woman who could stare at a blank page and still see a future. Their love didn't explode. It grew, like a sunrise that doesn't announce itself, but suddenly you realize the whole room is bright. They began meeting after work, sometimes at the waterfront, sometimes in the cafe where they first spoke. Kale would buy her meat pie and tease her about how she always ate the edges first. Zuri would steal his phone to take photos of him when he wasn't watching, because she liked the way he looked when he forgot to perform. 2 months in, Kale brought her to his small apartment. It wasn't fancy, but it was neat and honest. Folded clothes, a bookshelf, a radio that played old highlife. He cooked her rice that came out slightly too soft, and they laughed until their stomachs hurt. That night, when the city outside was noisy and fearless, Kale held her like he had been waiting his whole life to find someone who could rest in his arms without trying to escape. "Zuri," he said quietly, fingers brushing her cheek. "I'm not good at promises, but I'm good at staying." She believed him, not because she was naive, but because he sounded like truth. A year later, their love had routines. Kale's morning texts, "Did you drink water?" Zuri's late-night voice notes, "I miss you in a way that doesn't make sense." They planned the future like it was a house they were building together. Foundation first, then walls, then the pretty things. Kale wanted to take her to Accra someday. Zuri wanted a small wedding, no drama, just peace. Their friends already spoke of them like a finished story. Those two? Their endgame. But life is never as kind as love wants it to be. It started when Kale's mother fell ill back in his hometown. The calls came more often, urgent and trembling. The hospital bills stacked like bricks. Kale grew quiet, his eyes always elsewhere, his hands always holding a worry he couldn't put down. Zuri tried to carry some of it with him. She offered money, offered support, offered prayers, offered her presence. Kale accepted the help, but something in him began to close. He started working later, answering fewer calls, breathing like a man running from something he couldn't outrun. One night, Zuri went to his apartment with food, determined to push warmth back into him. She knocked twice. He opened the door slowly, like he wasn't sure who he would see. His eyes were red. The room smelled like stress, unwashed dishes, cold air, tired hope. "You didn't come yesterday," she said softly. "Or the day before." Kale rubbed his forehead. "I know." Zuri stepped inside anyway. "Talk to me," she begged. "Don't disappear inside your head." Kale's jaw tightened. "Zuri, I'm trying." "Trying what?" she asked. "Trying to handle everything alone? That's not love." He laughed once, bitter. "Love doesn't pay hospital bills." Zuri froze. It hurt, not because she didn't understand pressure, but because his words sounded like he was blaming her for not being able to fix what wasn't hers to fix. "Is that what I am to you?" she whispered. "A person who can't help enough?" Kale turned away. "You don't get it." "Then explain it," Zuri said, voice shaking. "Because right now, it feels like you're pushing me out." Kale spun back. "Maybe I am." Silence felt like something heavy and final. Zuri's eyes filled, but she refused to cry first. "Why?" Kale's shoulders rose and fell. "Because I'm tired," he said. "Because the kind of man I want to be for you, stable, ready, proud, I can't be him right now. My family is falling apart. I'm drowning. And every time I look at you, I feel like I'm borrowing happiness I haven't paid for." Zuri stepped closer, trembling. "Kale, love isn't a debt." He looked at her like he wanted to believe her, but couldn't afford to. "I can't keep doing this," he said. "I can't keep pretending everything is fine just because you're here. I need space." "Space?" Zuri repeated, stunned. "You mean you're leaving?" Kale's voice cracked. "I'm trying to save us from becoming something ugly." Zuri shook her head slowly. No, she said. You're choosing to walk away because you're scared. Kale's eyes flashed. Don't make this about fear. It is, Zuri said, tears finally spilling. Because if you loved me the way you said, you would let me stand beside you in the storm. He swallowed hard. Zuri. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. Say it clearly, she demanded. Are you ending this? Kale's mouth opened, then closed. His silence answered before his words did. I think. I have to. Zuri's heart felt like it had slipped out of her chest and hit the floor. Then I hope you don't regret it, she whispered. Kale took a step forward, like he wanted to hold her, but he stopped himself, as if touching her would break him completely. Zuri turned and walked out. She didn't slam the door. She didn't scream. She just left, quietly, like love leaving a home it once decorated. Outside, the night air hit her face, and she breathed like someone learning how to breathe again. 2 weeks later, Zuri realized her body had been trying to tell her a secret. She sat on the edge of her bathtub with a test in her hand, watching 2 lines appear like a sentence written in permanent ink. Positive. The world tilted. She pressed a palm to her stomach, half laughing, half shaking. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Then she cried, because a baby should feel like a blessing, but the first thing she felt was loneliness. She called Kale 3 times. No answer. She sent a message, Kale, please. It's important. It stayed unread. Zuri went to his apartment the next day. A stranger opened the door. Kale moved out, the man said. Weeks ago. Zuri stood there, speechless, her mouth open like a question that had nowhere to go. Do you know where? She managed. The man shook his head. Sorry. Zuri walked down the stairs slowly, one hand on the railing, the other pressing her belly like she could hold the baby in place by force of will. She didn't know whether to hate Kale or miss him. She didn't know whether to chase him or protect herself. She only knew one thing. He walked away not knowing she was pregnant, and she was left holding a future that had nowhere to put its father's name. Zuri didn't tell the world right away. She told her best friend, Lima, first, because Lima was the kind of friend who didn't panic, she planned. Lima arrived with groceries, peppermint tea, and a look that said, we will survive this. When Zuri finally spoke the words, I'm pregnant, she expected judgment, but Lima only took her hand and squeezed. Okay, Lima said simply. So we build a new plan. At first, Zuri waited for Kale to come back. Every unknown number made her stomach jump. Every knock at her door made her heartbeat sprint. She told herself he would regret leaving. He would return. He would apologize. He would see her with her rounded belly and fall to his knees and promise to stay forever. She replayed their love like a song she couldn't stop hearing. But Kale didn't return. Weeks became months. Zuri's belly grew, and so did her strength. She learned to separate her love for Kale from her responsibility to her child. She stopped searching for him online after seeing a blurred photo of him at some family event, looking thinner, eyes still carrying the weight she remembered. She told herself she wouldn't chase a man who had chosen silence. Her pregnancy was not easy. There were nights her back ached so badly she couldn't sleep. There were mornings she threw up until her throat burned. There were days at work where her smile felt heavy, where her boss asked if she was still committed to the firm now that she was becoming a mother. Zuri swallowed insults like bitter pills and kept showing up, because she refused to be small. When her son was born, the hospital room was filled with bright light and sharper pain. Zuri screamed into the sheets, gripping Lima's hand like a lifeline. The nurse kept saying, one more push, and Zuri kept thinking Kale should be here. He should be here. He should be here. But then the baby cried, strong, angry, alive, and Zuri's whole heart broke open in a new way. He's beautiful, Lima whispered. Zuri stared at her son's face, tiny nose, full lips, a faint crease between the brows that looked too familiar. Tears slid into her hair. His name is Nilo, she said, voice shaking. Nilo Adebayo. Lima hesitated. No Kale? Zuri looked away. Kale chose to leave, she said. So I choose to protect. In the early months, motherhood felt like being awake forever. Zuri learned to warm bottles with one hand and answer work emails with the other. She learned to cry quietly so her baby wouldn't hear. She learned to laugh again too, because Nilo had a smile that could pull sunlight out of darkness. When he turned 1, he toddled around the living room like a tiny king. When he turned 2, he called Zuri Mama, with a confidence that made her feel chosen by God. Still, sometimes, when the apartment grew quiet at night, Zuri would stare at the ceiling and whisper Kale's name like a prayer she didn't want to say anymore. Kale became a ghost, present in her memories, absent in her life. Then, on a random Wednesday 3 years after the breakup, Zuri saw him. It happened at a grocery store. Zuri was holding Nilo's hand, trying to convince him to stop throwing biscuits into the cart like it was a game, when she looked up and froze. Kale stood near the fruit section, staring at a list in his hand. He looked older, thinner, like life had pulled him through tight spaces. His beard was fuller, his eyes more guarded. But it was him. The same Kale who had promised he was good at staying. The same Kale who had left. Zuri's breath caught. Her fingers tightened around Nilo's hand. Kale turned as if he felt her stare. His eyes landed on Zuri, and for a second, time fell quiet. His face shifted, shock, regret, disbelief, all fighting for space. "Zuri," he said, voice rough. Zuri didn't answer at first. Her throat felt locked. Nilo looked up at her. "Mama," he asked. Kale's eyes dropped to the child's face, and something in his expression shattered. "Who is?" Kale began, then stopped, like the question hurt to touch. Zuri's mouth went dry. "This is my son," she said carefully. Kale's lips parted. His hand trembled slightly. "Your son." Nilo waved, innocent and bright. "Hello," he said. Kale stared like he was seeing a miracle and a punishment at the same time. "How old is he?" Kale whispered. Zuri swallowed. 3. Kale's knees seemed to soften. He grabbed the edge of the fruit stand for support. "Zuri," his voice broke. Is he mine?" Zuri's eyes burned. "What do you think?" she snapped, anger rising like fire she had buried for years. "You disappeared. You changed your number. You left the city. You left me. And yes, while you were busy saving yourself, my body was carrying your child." Kale looked like he had been punched. "I didn't know," he said, shaking his head, eyes glassy. "I swear I didn't know." "You didn't try to know," Zuri replied. "That's the difference." Kale opened his mouth, then closed it, guilt swallowing every excuse. My mother died," he said quietly. 2 months after we broke up. Everything collapsed. I went back home. I lost myself. I thought if I stayed near you, I would ruin you. I thought I was doing the right thing." Zuri laughed without humor. "The right thing would have been to answer your phone." Kale looked at Nilo again, pain twisting his features. Can I talk to him?" he asked softly. Zuri's chest tightened. A part of her wanted to scream no. Another part remembered the boy who once held doors open and promised to stay. But she looked at Nilo, her sweet, curious child, and knew the truth was bigger than her anger. "Not here," she said. "And not today." Kale nodded quickly, desperate. "Please, Zuri," he begged. "Let me make it right." Zuri stared at him, heart aching in complicated ways. "You can't make back 3 years," she said. "But you can start by not disappearing again." Kale swallowed. "I won't," he promised. "I won't." Zuri didn't believe promises easily anymore. But she took his number, wrote it down, and walked away with her son. That night, Zuri couldn't sleep. She watched Nilo breathe, his small chest rising and falling like a quiet ocean. She wondered what it would do to him, to meet the father he never knew. She wondered what it would do to her, to open a door she had locked to survive. Kale texted at 2:14 a.m. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I want to be in his life, if you'll let me. I want to be in yours too, if there's any chance." Zuri stared at the message until her eyes blurred. She didn't reply. Because love had once been easy with Kale. But now love came with history. And history had teeth. Kale met Nilo for the first time at a small park on a Sunday morning. Zuri chose daylight on purpose, because daylight reveals everything, and she was done with shadows. Lima came too, sitting on a bench at a distance like a quiet guard. Kale arrived early, hands empty, as if he didn't want to buy his way into forgiveness. When Nilo ran toward the swings, Kale watched him like he couldn't breathe properly. "That's him," Zuri said, voice flat. "That's your son." Kale's eyes shone. He's perfect," he whispered. Nilo climbed onto the swing and looked at Kale with curiosity. "Are you my uncle?" he asked. Kale flinched at the word. Zuri held her breath. Kale crouched a little, so he was at Nilo's level. "Not your uncle," he said gently. I'm Kale." Nilo blinked. "Kale," he repeated, tasting the name. Kale glanced at Zuri, silent question in his eyes. Zuri's throat tightened, but she spoke. "Nilo," she said, "Kale is your father." Nilo stared for a long second, then shrugged like it was interesting but not yet heavy. "Okay," he said, and turned back to the swing. "Push me." Kale's laugh broke into a sob. He stood behind the swing and pushed slowly, carefully, like he was afraid to push too hard and lose this moment. Nilo squealed with joy. Zuri watched, arms folded, heart split open by how unfair life was. How something could look so right after being so wrong. Kale kept showing up. At first, Zuri treated his presence like a test. She watched for excuses, for disappearing acts, for selfishness. But Kale came every weekend. He learned Nilo's favorite cartoons. He learned how to pack snacks without forgetting napkins. He learned how to tie small shoes and how to apologize when he did it wrong. He was awkward at first, like a man trying to step into a story that had already started without him. But he tried. And Zuri couldn't ignore effort forever. One evening, after Kale dropped Nilo back home, he lingered by Zuri's door. The hallway light painted tired shadows on his face. "Zuri," he said softly, "can we talk? Not about Nilo. About us." Zuri hesitated. "There is no us, Kale." Kale's eyes held hers. "There was," he said. "And I broke it. But I don't want to pretend I stopped loving you just because I left. I was stupid. I was proud. I was scared. I thought leaving would save you from my mess, but all it did was give you pain you never deserved." Zuri's laugh was small and shaky. "Pain I never deserved," she repeated. "Kale, I cried through my pregnancy. I gave birth holding my friend's hand because you weren't there. I watched my son take his first steps and his first words, and I did it alone. Do you understand what it means to be left like that?" Kale's eyes filled. "I do now," he whispered. "And I hate myself for it." Zuri's voice softened despite herself. "Hating yourself won't fix it." Kale nodded. "Then tell me what to do," he pleaded. "Tell me how to earn a place beside you again." Zuri stared at him, exhausted by the battle between her heart and her pride. "Start by accepting that you may never get it back," she said. "And still do the right thing." Kale nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. "I'll do the right thing, even if it costs me everything." Months passed, and their co-parenting turned into something gentler. Sometimes Kale stayed for dinner, just to help Nilo eat, just to clean up, just to make the house feel less heavy. Sometimes Kale and Zuri found themselves laughing again, small laughter that surprised them both. Sometimes, when Nilo fell asleep on Kale's shoulder, Zuri's chest tightened with a feeling she couldn't name. Grief for what was stolen, and hope for what might still live. One night, Zuri got sick. At first it was just tiredness, more tired than motherhood usually demanded. Then came dizziness. Then came the bruises that appeared too easily. Lima insisted she go to the hospital. Zuri went, expecting iron deficiency, stress, anything ordinary. The doctor's face was not ordinary. Zuri sat on the hospital bed, fingers clenched around the sheet, while the doctor spoke gently. Blood tests. Further tests. A condition that needed immediate treatment. The words landed like stones in water, quiet but deep. Zuri's mouth went numb. "So what happens now?" she asked. The doctor explained treatment plans, timelines, possibilities. Zuri listened like she was outside her own body. When the doctor left, the room went too silent. Zuri's first thought was Nilo. Her second thought was Kale. When Kale arrived at the hospital, he looked terrified before she even spoke. "What happened?" he demanded, voice shaking. Zuri tried to smile, but it came out broken. "I'm sick," she said simply. Kale's eyes widened. "How sick?" Zuri's throat tightened. "Sick enough that I need you to be steady," she said. "For Nilo." Kale sat hard in the chair beside her bed, his face crumpling. "No," he whispered. "Not you. Not now. Zuri, please." Zuri reached for his hand. "This isn't about what we want," she said softly. "It's about what we do." Kale squeezed her hand like he could hold her life in his palm. "I'm here," he promised, voice thick. "I'm not leaving again. I swear it. I'm here." And this time Zuri believed him, because life had forced truth into his bones. Kale became her shadow. He took Nilo to school. He learned Zuri's medication schedule. He sat beside her during treatments, holding her hand when her body shook, whispering stories into her ear when she couldn't lift her head. Sometimes Zuri would wake from a rough sleep and find Kale asleep in the hospital chair, his arms still stretched toward her bed like he had fallen asleep mid-protection. One evening, as rain tapped gently against the hospital window, Zuri stared at Kale and said, "If you had stayed, would our life have been different?" Kale swallowed. "Yes," he said, voice low. "And I'll spend the rest of mine regretting that I didn't." Zuri's eyes filled. "Regret is heavy," she whispered. Kale leaned closer, forehead nearly touching hers. "Then let me carry it," he said. "You carried too much alone." Zuri's lips trembled. "Kale, I still love you," she admitted, like it was a secret she had been punishing herself for. But love doesn't erase what happened. Cale nodded, tears sliding down his cheeks. I know, he said. But maybe love can still build something new, even on a cracked foundation. Zuri closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, she let herself rest her head against his shoulder. The months were a fight. Some days Zuri felt strong. Some days she felt like paper. Nilo drew pictures of their family with stick figures holding hands. Zuri, Nilo, Cale, like a child's art could rewrite time. Cale kept every drawing, folding them carefully into his wallet like sacred promises. Zuri improved. Not quickly, not magically, but slowly, with hard work and prayer and stubborn will. The day her doctor said the treatment was working, Zuri cried until her chest hurt. Cale cried too, openly, not caring who saw. When Zuri finally returned home for good, Cale cooked a meal and burned the rice again, exactly like the old days. Zuri laughed until she cried. Nilo danced around the living room, chanting, "Mama is back! Mama is back!" That night, when Nilo fell asleep between them on the couch, Cale looked at Zuri with eyes full of quiet devotion. "Marry me," he said suddenly, voice trembling. "Not because we need a perfect story, but because I want to spend the rest of my life proving I can be the man who stays." Zuri stared at him for a long moment. She thought of the pain, the lonely hospital bed years ago, the unanswered calls, the fear, the strength she built out of necessity. She thought of the father he had become, the hands that didn't disappear anymore. She thought of her son sleeping peacefully, finally surrounded by something that looked like wholeness. "I can't promise I'll never remember the hurt," Zuri whispered. Cale nodded, tears in his eyes. "Then I won't ask you to forget," he said. "I'll just ask you to let me love you anyway." Zuri breathed in slowly, as if tasting the shape of a second chance. "Okay," she said softly. "But this time we build with truth." Cale smiled through tears. "With truth," he repeated. They didn't get the years back. They didn't rewrite what was lost. But they stopped bleeding from it. They built something honest, something that didn't pretend love is always smooth, but proved love can still be real after it breaks. And if you're listening close, you'll hear the quiet lesson in their story. Sometimes the worst goodbye isn't the one you say, it's the one you never explain. But even then, life can still surprise you if you choose to show up. Please comment,